Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. Before I get started, I want to offer my condolences to the family and friends of former Governor Jim Guy Tucker. He is one of a generation of Arkansas leaders who had an immeasurable impact on our state, and our thoughts and prayers are with his entire family as they deal with this difficult loss. I also want to take a minute to thank Senator Dismang and Representative Shepard for their support of this legislation that we are here to announce. These are two of the most experienced, most respected members of the legislature, and they've done a lot of the heavy lifting we need to support this bill, and I'm grateful for their hard work and their support and dedication to seeing us make significant change and impact here in Arkansas. I also want to thank our Secretary of Education, Jacob Oliva, and our Commissioner of Higher Education, Dr. Ken Warden, for the expertise and hard work that they've brought, not just to this bill, but every single day to the Department of Education. Thank you all for your hard work. We're also joined by many of our university chancellors, administrators, professors, and students. Thank you all for being here. And to the other legislators in the room, I'm sorry for making you stay late in Little Rock on a Friday, but we are certainly thankful for your presence and willingness to be here. I laid it out in my State of the State address. Higher education reform is my top priority for this legislative session. And today, I'm proud to announce my plan to improve opportunities for our students post-high school called Arkansas Access. We've spent the past several months working on this legislation, and I was excited to share its details with many of our state's education leaders. Through that process, I've been reminded of just how important education is to the journey of so many Arkansans. I shared the story of Tiffany String during my State of the State, a woman with just a sixth grade education who was abandoned by her husband with no job, no car, and 3 kids at home. She biked herself to ASU-BB to earn her nursing degree, and this May is going to graduate as a registered nurse. I met with her family after the speech, and I saw just how much Tiffany's sons look up to her, not just as a mom, but as a provider and as a role model. That's what higher education can give and gave Tiffany, and it's what it can give to every other Arkansan in the state. I could spend my entire speech telling stories like Tiffany's. There's Jessica, who managed to raise a family and work night shifts while earning her degree in pharmacy technology. Now she's a professor, giving other students the same opportunity that she had. Or there's Jasper, the Marine Corps veteran from Jacksonville, who studied computerized machining, also at night, and did so well in class that he joined his Campus Skills USA state team and won an award in automated manufacturing. He and his wife welcomed their first kid in his last year at school, and thanks to the higher salary he's now able to own, purchased their first home. Each of these stories shows the power of higher education and the many diverse paths Arkansans take to achieve it. But that doesn't mean that there aren't problems. We all see the same issues. The system has become too complicated, too woke, and far too often doesn't fully prepare students for the jobs of the future. Access will fix that. We will reduce the complexity in students' path to higher education so that anyone from an 18-year-old high school senior to a middle-aged mom looking to re-enter the workforce can get the education that they want and that they deserve. We will ensure high school students who want to take college courses before they graduate don't have to pay out of pocket. We'll increase the funding available for scholarships like the Workforce Challenge and double the first-year funding of the Academic Challenge, a program that my dad started and I was a recipient of. We'll expand the number of admissions exams students can take to go to school. We'll grant provisional admission to any student who meets higher education institutions' baseline requirements and offer in-state tuition to Arkansas's military families. We will make it so that applicants can submit one application and apply to any public college or university in the entire state. Higher education should be available to anyone who wants it, right after high school or many years down the line, and access will make that a reality. We will also get indoctrination out of higher education so students can learn in a free, unbiased setting. No more using DEI in accreditation standards. No more forced statements in support of DEI. And no more excused absences for protests. We will honor higher education institutions that go above and beyond to serve our military families by giving them the same Purple Star campus designation that our K through 12 schools can now earn. And if a student vandalizes school property, we will not let them graduate until they pay for the repairs themselves. We will ensure professors are held accountable for the job that they are hired to do. And finally, we will make sure that if a student decides to attend college, they actually get the real life skills that they're paying for. We will consider return on investment in our productivity-based funding model so that taxpayers are funding degrees that contribute to our state and to our economy. I know this is a lot. There's a lot packed into this bill. And we will create a funding model for non-degree credentials so that Arkansans can go to school for the skills they need, leave without too much debt, and enter the workforce as soon as possible. I want to again thank the many legislators that are in the room, our education leaders, members of our education department for their hard work on this legislation. For far too long, we've told the lie that the only way to be successful is to graduate college with a 4-year degree straight out of high school. When I sign Access, we will tell Arkansans the truth. Everyone is unique, and everyone's education journey should be too. I'll now turn it over to our primary sponsors of the legislation. Let Secretary Oliva come back up to speak, and then we'll take a few questions. Thank you so much for being here. Most importantly, thank you for your commitment and dedication to making sure every single student in the state of Arkansas has a great pathway to success. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, first, that was an incredible job of providing a summary, and I'm thankful I don't have to do that. But I do want to speak to my colleagues because it was something that dawned on me yesterday. I had a meeting with an individual. He was concerned about things happening, not in our community, even in my district, just in his own city. And what he kept coming back to and what we finally decided was, you know, every roadblock he hit was with really one response. That's the way that we've always done it. Right? And when you get this bill, and we hope to be able to release it on Monday, what you're going to see is time after time after time, the elimination where we have codified in our statutes, this is how we've always done it. Your folks back home are sick of the status quo, and they're sick of the status quo in higher education. And so what I am proud of is really, Governor, we're seeing in so much of what's happening with the legislature and your initiatives is saying no to the status quo. And what you're going to find is that there is a focus on the individual in this particular situation. It's a focus on the student. We're going to be looking and increasing the opportunities that they have before them, and then we're going to be maximizing their outcomes and so they can be as successful as they can possibly be. And again, there are so many initiatives that are occurring in this state right now that are going to make us rise to the top. And this is just one more step in that, and I'm proud to be a part of this process.
Well, I would just echo Senator Dismang's remarks. That's one of the things that I've noticed and that really has come to the forefront for me over the past 14 years in the legislature is that the status quo is not going to cut it. Doing the same thing the same way and expecting a different result is not going to cut it. And I want to thank the governor for her leadership, first with the LEARNS Act and with many other pieces of legislation, but then with what the vision that she has cast with Access. And I think that as we look at this, and I approach this from a couple of different vantage points. One, as a legislator, someone who is obviously looking at it from the standpoint of my constituents and from the standpoint of the state as a whole. But then I also consider it from the standpoint of a parent who has 3 children, 2 of whom are in college right now. One is still in high school. But as we have worked through the Access bill, there have been so many things that honestly I didn't realize that this is how we do it. This doesn't make any sense. And I think that what you're going to see in the legislation is you're going to see something that is very pragmatic. It makes a lot of sense. Actually, if you look over here, it makes common sense. And so what I would encourage my colleagues, and I've had discussions with several of my colleagues thus far, and obviously I know that they want to see the details of the legislation, and they want to read the bill, which is something I always encourage people to do. But I've also had conversations with many of the leadership of our higher education institutions, and I think this today is a day that we will look back at many years from now, and we will count not just a few lives that were changed, but generations that have been changed by what we're about to set forth on under the leadership of Governor Sanders. I'm thankful to just be a small part of this. I look forward to advancing this legislation. I look forward to sharing this legislation with my colleagues and with the state as we move forward. Thank you.
Good morning. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you, Representative Shepard, Senator Dismang, Governor Sanders, for the opportunity to be here and discuss something that I know is really exciting about laying the foundation for the future work on how we're going to build aligned systems. When we were here about 2 years ago, and Governor Sanders said we need to make sure we prioritize education, make sure that there's a path for every student, understand that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work for all of our students and families, we introduced the Arkansas Learns Bill that we started having a conversation on how this is building a system of alignment from cradle to career. And oftentimes I get asked questions when I'm working in districts, meeting with stakeholders, and people ask me, why do we continually get the educational outcomes when we're investing so heavily in our students? Why aren't we seeing those great results? And I keep oftentimes saying, it's not that we don't have hardworking teachers, it's not that we don't have schools that are going above and beyond, great elected officials, great administrators, but if the system's not aligned and the system's broken, it's hard to be successful. So what we did in Arkansas Learns in building out that system is making sure that everything was seamless. And there's a saying that says, bad systems beat good people every single time. While we were going around implementing Learns, we were meeting with superintendents, meeting with college presidents, technical centers, university system folks, and we were asking them questions about how come we're not getting these students transition? What is a barrier in the system? And we started for about the last year and a half putting pen to paper and saying, these are barriers stopping students from achieving what we call the 3 E's when they leave high school. Are they ready to be enlisted, employed, or enrolled? All of those obstacles and barriers need to be removed so the system is seamless and we can make that transition be successful. I'm excited about the work that's going into this bill because it is common sense and it is focusing on acceleration. Folks, we've got talented students that need a system that allows them to thrive, and we're going to build that, and this is what's so exciting is because Arkansas is going to continue to excel. So thank you for being here and part of this announcement, and we're really excited to engage in this next step of our journey.
Thank you. We'll now take a couple questions if there are any.
How much is it going to cost to implement, and what is the time frame for implementing the provision? It's going to take several years?
No, on several years. In terms of the cost, we don't expect that there will be any new general revenue funding needed, but we will repurpose existing funds within the department to fund some of the projects and some of the specific details.
Why not, those collaborative finance activity challenge scholarships, why not increase everybody's award by $1,000? You've got $320 million in that trust account.
We feel like this is one of the best places that we can really invest in students and help them where they need it most. And so there are several other pieces that deal specifically with scholarships and enhancing and removing some of the barriers. But that's, I think, one of the biggest places where you see a significant increase. But there are a couple other parts. One, the Arkansas Heroes Scholarship Program that's part of this legislation that rewards our military veterans, law enforcement, and first responders, puts all of that into one category, streamlining that process, creating greater access. The workforce challenge, additional funding there. So there are several places. That was just one I chose to highlight today.
Indoctrination, upset or felt like some of our stories focused too much on that. Are you banning indoctrination only with PEI or what other subjects?
We believe that every student in the state of Arkansas should be able to learn in a free, unbiased environment. We want to uphold and enforce the Constitution and state and federal law, and we feel like this legislation certainly continues to do that and reflect it. I'm not upset, but I do think when you have a piece of legislation that contains as much substance as this does, for you to only focus on one part would be a total disservice to the people of this state. Absolutely. I'm always happy to turn it over.
Come on, Representative.
Yeah.
What's, okay?
Are you comfortable with indoctrination language? If your wife asked you, what are you doing, what's the goal there?
Do you think that if I'm sponsoring it, I'm comfortable with it? I mean, have I ever put my name on a piece of legislation that I didn't believe in? And I do believe in this. I've spent a lot of time on this, and I take it very seriously. To your point, you mentioned that my wife is a teacher. She's a public school teacher. And so I have a high degree of respect for our teachers, both in K through 12 and in higher education. But I think we all understand that there's a difference between teaching and making sure that individuals understand the subject matter. And as a history and political science major from Ouachita Baptist University, I understand how it is to have debate and be able to discuss issues. But there's a difference between that and compelling individuals to affirm certain ideas that may be discriminatory in nature. And so I'm comfortable with that. I've spent a lot of time on that. I want to thank the governor and the department, quite frankly, for their willingness to really get into the details. That this is not about just running something so we can say that we checked the box. This is about running something that is going to make a difference and that I think is going to be needed. Again, I've had many discussions with individuals in higher education, and particularly on this language. I understand that this is going to be something that grabs a lot of attention. To the governor's point, I think at last count the bill was about 110 pages. This section is probably 5 or 6 pages, maybe. So it's a small part of a much larger bill. But I'm comfortable with it, and I'm going to be very comfortable with being able to explain and advocate for that bill. Not necessarily defend it, but to actually advocate that not only is this the right thing, it's the thing that my legislative colleagues need to join us in passing and moving quickly through the House and the Senate.
Correct.
We'll take 5 or 6 if you want.
It's just part of the drafting process. I mean, we have 135 members of the House and the Senate, the Bureau. We have a limited number of bill drafters, and so we are working through that process and continuing to look at the legislation and the language, because we want to do the best we can to put forward something that is the best possible bill that we can have when we file it on Monday.
I don't think that's addressed here, but what it does address is the student. And I think as long as that student is successful, these university systems or career tech, or whatever it may be, that are providing a needed service to those students, they will be successful. And so in a sense, I think that'll answer itself as we move through. But this does nothing to address the number of schools that we have. And you asked a question about the lottery scholarship and should we do more. I think at a minimum, we have to do more with 1,000. I think there's a bigger conversation that has to happen. There was a constitutional amendment passed that deals with technical schools, and we're not sure what that amount will be because it is still kind of in flux with what members are looking to maybe propose or not propose. But at its basic, I think we did a disservice when we set that amount at $1,000 for a first-year student. And the reason why it is just not enough of an incentive to get someone to pull the trigger to make that commitment to go on to the next step coming out of high school. So again, I think this is what we can do now. I agree with you. We have let the fund grow too large, and we will continue to revisit that year after year and making sure that we're maximizing the dollars that are going to the students.
How many co-sponsors do you guys have?
Co-sponsors? I haven't counted because we haven't asked for any yet because we respect our colleagues. Well, we've got one that's raising his hand here. Our focus has been on the language of the legislation. I made the comment the other day that sometimes I believe we'll have many co-sponsors if that's the route we go. Sometimes you run bills and you run it with just a lead sponsor on each end. I anticipate that we will file it and then likely we'll amend on co-sponsors. Our focus has not been on trying to have a scavenger hunt to see how many signatures we can get on the bill at the outset. Our focus has been on drafting the language, and then we respect our colleagues enough to let them read the bill, and then they can make the determination as to whether they want to go ahead and put their name on it. I expect that we will have many, many that will want to sign on. I've already heard from many, even just based on the broad concepts we've discussed, but we believe we'll have very strong support.
Is there about 140,000 students in hiring? Yeah, 146, 156. Can you repeat that? Well, so this is, sure. So I always say that education is the ticket to prosperity. And when we look at even some of the national census data that looks at measuring a figure called attainment, and that's the adults in this state, age 22 to 65, which is considered a working age, that starts at a very basic metric that says they have gotten at least a high school diploma, we're 40th in the nation. So when we talk about access, if you don't have access to a high school diploma, you're limiting your ticket to prosperity. So this bill starts pushing an accelerated mindset that we can achieve the very minimum expectation, and that's getting a standard diploma. When you measure Arkansans that have a high school diploma and maybe an industry certification or some college or a degree, we fall even further in the rankings. So this isn't about a number saying I want to hit 200,000, 300,000. I want everybody to achieve their personal desired outcome and be on a highway that leads them to be independent and successful in life. And that highway needs to have exit ramps and on-ramps. Everybody needs to leave our system ready to be enlisted, employed, or enrolled. And that's not independent of each other. Some people get enlisted so that they can become enrolled. Some people get enlisted so they can become employed. Some people become employed so that they can become enrolled. It's all about creating a system that sets everybody up for success. Right now, because we're not standardized and unified and coordinated, we have unnecessary roadblocks and measures that discourage students and families from participating in prosperity, and we're going to remove that. You want me to? So we hear anecdotally, and we've had folks send us stuff, so I'd have to go through my archives to see if I still have it, about where professors may be giving an assignment to a student, or adults are having to participate in professional development where they are being compelled to adhere, affirm, or adopt a certain point of view or a belief. And I can put a call out to parents to send me information right now to say, show me that assignment where if a student didn't write in a particular point of view, they were graded differently. That has happened in this state, and we need to make sure we're protecting those students from those possible indoctrinations because they have a right to decide what's best for them. This is about teaching students how to think, not what to think. And when we're in a classroom, I want to be clear to all our professors. This is why you're professionals. You should engage in debate. You should argue multiple perspectives and multiple points of view. You should engage in critical thinking. That's what good teachers do. That's what good professors do. But if you go a step further and say, if you don't take my adoptions and beliefs and affirm it as your own personal set of values, then we've gone too far. I'm having a hard time hearing.
The legislation is going to apply even-handedly, and so don't, at this point, want to wait till the bill is filed. Don't want to get too far into the specifics because, again, I want everybody to read the bill. Don't rely on what may be said on the various social media outlets or the headlines or whatever. Read the bill, because I think that when it comes down to it, Representative Eubanks made the reference to me pointing out a concern in the cell phone bill that thankfully we sent it back to committee and we made it a good bill. Like, it was a good bill, to be clear, but we were making sure that there was not an unintended consequence, because it matters what is in the bill. And so that's my message, is for folks to read the bill, but it will apply even-handedly.
I don't think there's a timeline on when to have it in committee. We want members to be comfortable with it. Obviously, the public will have access to it the moment that it is filed, so I don't think we're in some huge rush, but we also have a limited amount of time for us to consider things in session, and so we're not going to also drag our feet as we move forward. But we do, and it's important to me that the members have an understanding of what they're voting on. There was a question about co-sponsors. I have never once since I've been here asked a member to co-sponsor a bill that was not either ready to file and in its final form or filed. And so that's, like I said, I think that same courtesy is something we'll do with this bill. If everybody's comfortable and we're ready to go, then fine. I don't think that will be the case, but I'm not going to say anything's off the table.
I think this is focused on vandalism as part of, we're not talking about, some kind of inadvertent, accidental damage, and this bill is focused on higher education, so the vast majority of those individuals are likely over 18 years old. And so this is just making clear that if individuals are going to engage in certain types of conduct that may be destructive to our institutions, which we could look across the country at examples of that we're going to clearly, in addition to whatever else may be allowed in law, we're going to clearly require accountability and restitution to take care of those damages before they're going to be able to take advantage of whatever degree they may be pursuing. And so it just makes, again, common sense that we would expect that. It reminds me of what you see oftentimes in high school, that the kids for graduation, the superintendent might remind them that, at least some of the high schools I'm aware of, that diploma, that bound thing that you received doesn't actually have your diploma in it. And so don't go act up out there in commencement, or you might not get your diploma. This is kind of the common sense, is like, we're not going to let you to destroy our institutions and then just let you walk away and get the benefit of what those institutions are providing.
Thank you all so much. Thanks for being here today.